Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you are actually listening to this lecture and watching this PowerPoint. This goes with your patient care 7th edition book, and this is chapter 2, which starts on page 14. As we talked about in the last one, the best way to approach this is to have your book out and go through along with the PowerPoint. Make sure you print the PowerPoint out and take notes as you go, so that if you have any questions or anything that doesn't make sense or is confusing, you can make note of it and we can make sure to clear that up when we talk. All right, so chapter 2 is all about professional organizations, and the reason these are important is because each of them speaks differently for us and does different things for us. In this chapter, we will only focus on the ones that have to do with radiology. So again, not that any of the others aren't important, but the ones that have to do specifically with diagnostic medical sonography or nuclear medicine, some of those other modalities, those would be important to practitioners in that field. So we're going to concentrate mainly on the ones that have to do with radiology. Again, I would look at the objectives in this, and I would make sure you look at some of the key terms that are in this. There's not as many in chapter 2, but again, accreditation, certification, joint review committee, licensure, registry, some sponsoring organizations, the standards, all of those are important as far as what they mean and what specifically they mean to us. When we look at the objectives for chapter 2, mainly you want to be able to differentiate accreditation, certification, and the representation functions of different professional organizations as they relate to us. You want to be able to describe the organizations that carry out the aspects of a specific radiologic technology area of specialization. And you want to be able to talk about the relationship of radiologist and physicist organizations with radiologic technology, because some are specific to technologists while others are specific to radiologists and physicists. When we look at the classifications of ensuring quality of workers, there are different aspects such as accreditation, which tends to apply to an institution. There are certifications, which apply to people. Licensure also applies to people, and professional organizations, meaning that only members in that profession tend to be able to be allowed into that organization. So accreditation, certification, licensure, and professional organizations are all important to our field. When we look at accreditation, this is on page 15, and accreditation is typically something that happens for an organization or of the school. It's a process to assess the high quality of operations and offerings of the school. I can tell you that Daytona Beach campus is an accredited program, which is something that we hold very near and dear. It took a lot of work to earn our accreditation, and it is something that we value greatly. Not all Kaiser campuses are accredited, but Daytona Beach definitely is an accredited campus. What that means is that it's a voluntary process where it's peer reviewed, meaning that people that are in our field actually review what we do, how we do it, make sure that we actually carry it out, and they approve or don't approve the fact that we maintain our accreditation. We have been accredited for as long as it is possible to be accredited as a program. We'll talk about, you have to have a certain number of graduates or a certain number of people come through the program before you can apply for accreditation. It ensures that we comply with the established standards of performance. There are several areas involved within the healthcare system. We have standards that are set by organizations that sponsor the accrediting agency, and it is very highly valued by members of the profession. So when we talk about accreditation, it basically sets the conditions under which members qualify for entry into the profession. An accredited program satisfactorily demonstrates compliance with educational standards that are developed for and by the profession. And these standards are actually set by the organizations that sponsor the accrediting agency. So each organization appoints one or more members to what's called the board of directors. That's the joint committee. The Joint Review Committee, or the JRC. These are people that are appointed by the sponsor organizations to oversee the accreditation process. So these members basically approve a document which is called the standards, and the standards are what the guidelines that we have to abide by in order to maintain our accreditation. Basically, they detail the minimum requirements for how an accredited program has to operate. The accreditation process is quite lengthy. It starts with an application from the program. So we would submit an application. This would be likely the first time we did it. We submitted an application. Once that application was approved, then we have to put together a self-study is compiled by the program according to the guidelines set by the accrediting agency. This document, we submit this document, and I can tell you the last self-study that we submitted was over 1,100 pages long. It is not a quick process. The accreditation process, even when you're going for reaccreditation, takes about an 18-month time frame. So we submitted the self-study, and then there's a team assigned to our accreditation process. It has site visitors that go over that document with a fine-tooth comb. They pull out things that they want to check when they come to visit, read through the entire thing, and typically once it's submitted, their visit occurs within about 6 months from the time it's submitted. Now, when those site visitors come out, they are actually volunteers from the profession who serve with no pay. But when they come, we actually pay for their expenses. So typically we pay for their airfare, their hotel, their lodging, any travel expenses they incur, and we typically try and cover most of their meals or put them up in a hotel that offers breakfast, and then usually we take them out to dinner, and we usually provide lunch when they're here doing their visit. Once they get done with their visit, which is typically a 2 or 3 day process where they interview all faculty, they interview the staff, they interview most, if not all, students on campus, asking specific questions, asking for documentation to prove that we actually do what we say we do. A very lengthy process. But once that's done, they return back and they actually submit a report to the accrediting agency that gets reviewed and presented to the board, and they actually vote on the accreditation status. Typically, accreditation can be awarded as either a provisional accreditation, a probationary accreditation, and then there's different time frames. Typically, I believe the first accreditation we were awarded was 18 months, and then it goes all the way from that up to 8 years is the longest accreditation that you can receive. The last time we went through accreditation, which was in 2018, we did receive an 8-year status. So that was really good, but it doesn't end there. We have to keep maintaining the records, and then halfway through we have to submit a new report that says that we're still doing everything, and it's an ongoing process. So the biggest thing with it is it's voluntary. You do not have to be accredited, but it absolutely looks good. It means that if you are accredited, that you go above and beyond, that it means it usually shows that the educational program respects the accreditation process, wants to be a part of that process, and wants to maintain those high standards that the radiography educational programs insist on. There are very few programs that do not undergo the accreditation process, and accreditation is something that is valued very highly by the program. The accreditation of schools can be either programmatic or regional and institutional. Again, this is all found on page 15. The programmatic accreditors, we have for our particular program, it's this first one. It is the Joint Review Committee on Education in Radiologic Technology. So we usually refer to them as JRCERT. So JRCERT is the one that is responsible for the radiology program. That is who our programmatic accreditation is through. You can see that there's one for sonography and also one for nuclear medicine technology, which are important, but not really to us. So the Joint Review Committee on Education in Radiologic Technology, or JRCERT, is on page 15, and they are the ones that actually came up with the standards that an educational institution has to abide by. Anything to do with the program or education as far as how we operate or what we're required to do, that is going to have been put in place by JRCERT. So they have a joint review committee where the accrediting agency appoints members to that board, and it's specific to education and radiologic technology that they abide by, and that is who we submit all of our proof to, and who approves or denies our accreditation application. The JRCERT accredits more than any other, they accredit more programs than any other allied health profession. There are over 700 programs in radiology, radiation therapy, and medical dosimetry and MRI. And their address, if you choose to look them up, is www.jrcert.org. When we look at JRCERT, they are concerned with the compliance and the education standards that are developed for and by the profession of radiologic technology. They're governed by a board of directors that is called the Joint Review Committee, or the JRC. And JRCERT, Joint Review Committee on Education and Radiologic Technology, accreditation requires demonstrated compliance with minimum requirements, the essentials and guidelines, or the standards. Actually, now they're referred to as the standards. So there is just pages and pages of standards that we have to meet, and not only meet, minimally meet. You tend to go above and beyond, but it says that you have to demonstrate compliance with the minimum requirements. So that demonstration comes with speaking to students and making sure that things are carried out the way they say they are, looking at paperwork documentation, looking at student files, looking at programmatic files. When they come for that visit for accreditation, they literally spend days going through every file, every piece of paperwork, all student files, tests, quizzes, memos, emails. They just look at everything to make sure that what we say we do, we actually have proof that we are doing. JRCERT was established in 1969, and the board members are nominated by 4 professional organizations that are concerned with radiology education. And those 4 organizations are the ACR, which is the American College of Radiology, the ARRT, which is the American Society of Radiologic Technologists, AIRS, which is the Association of Educators in Imaging and Radiological Sciences, and the AHR, American Healthcare Radiology Administrators. Those 4 organizations, professional organizations, are concerned with radiology education, and those board members are nominated by those 4 agencies. They currently accredit programs, as I said before, in radiography, radiation therapy, medical dosimetry, and magnetic resonance imaging. As far as certification, this is typically of individuals. So accreditation is more of an institution. Institutions get accredited, people get certified. So certification deals with demonstrating a minimum competency in a recognized professional skill level and knowledge. Typically, it's demonstrated by a test. It can be whether it's a written test or a skills test. Let's take, for example, CPR. you guys will need your certification in cardiopulmonary resuscitation, which means that you will sit through a class where they teach you how to properly perform CPR, the Heimlich maneuver, how to treat both adults, children, and infants. And then in order to prove that you're competent, you take not only a written test, but you take a skill test where you have to actually show how you would perform those skills on mannequins. And then once you pass that proficiently with a written test and a skill test, then you are given your CPR card, was that you are certified to perform cardiopulmonary resuscitation on individuals. Certification is a voluntary process and highly sought after by professionals within healthcare. And when they're talking about this certification, now they're more referencing when we take our registry. We do have to take and pass that registry in order to practice in field. So that is a voluntary process. I don't know why you would go through 16 months of our program and not take the registry. That is kind of silly to me, a lot of wasted blood, sweat, and tears in that, but it is a voluntary process nonetheless. And once you pass that registry, there is a listing of certified individuals that is called the registry. So it's a list of individuals that hold a particular certification. If they actually put out every other year a listing of all the technologists that certifications in those specific fields, whether it's radiography, nuclear medicine technology, diagnostic medical sonography, nuclear medicine, CT, MRI, bone densitometry, all those ones we talked about in chapter 1, they actually list all the individuals. And if they don't list them by name, they will give a specific number of how many people hold certifications in those modalities. It is your personal responsibility to achieve and maintain your professional certification. There are different things that we have to do in order to maintain that certification. Sometimes you have to do continuing education credits. You have to prove proficiency. Different standards that have to be held depending on what your certification is or what you are trying to achieve. And your professional certification is a requirement for employment in a hospital setting. Meaning, as I said before, if you choose to practice, the only way hospitals and imaging centers will be reimbursed is if the exam was done by a professionally certified individual. So it is required. When we look at certification, it is offered in different medical imaging professions. These are most, if not all, the things that we talked about are career opportunities. When you all graduate, you will have your certification in radiography. You can go on with additional schooling for nuclear medicine technology, and again with radiation therapy, there is additional schooling that's required. Sonography, vascular sonography, breast sonography, CT, MRI, cardiac interventional, vascular interventional, quality management, bone densitometry, and a radiology assistant, which now they tend to refer to this as an RRA, which is a registered radiologist assistant. All of these certifications are offered by the ARRT, which is the American Registry of Radiologic Technologists. That is found on page 16 as well. This organization is the one that provides all these certifications, all the exams, all the registries that are given in these exams. That is done by the ARRT. The certified professionals are listed in a national registry as proof of their achievement, and many require ongoing continuing education. Okay? Now that continuing education means that once you graduate, like I graduated 30 years ago, I can't just say, well, I graduated 30 years, so I am a qualified, competent, current technologist. I have to do continuing education units every year, and I have to prove them so that I remain a competent, qualified prudent practitioner in the field, meaning that I'm keeping up with current operations, the way things are done. I'm not practicing like we did 30 years ago. I'm practicing according to today's standards. With the ARRT, their whole purpose is that they want to encourage the study of radiologic technology. They do provide the exam and certify eligible candidates, and they also publish a listing of registrants. Typically, it's biannually or every other year. They do talk about that once you pass that certification, these are the initials that would be listed behind your name. This one for radiography, this would be therapy, radiation therapy, meaning you were a tech first and then you went on. MR for magnetic resonance imaging, M for mammography, cardiac interventional, quality management, bone densitometry, and CT. Now, in order to belong to the ARRT, which, as I said, this is the American Registry of Radiologic Technologists, the ARRT, was founded in 1922, and they do provide our registry exam. Before we talk about what we agree to when we sit for that exam, they recognize that you pay an annual fee in order to maintain an active status with the ARRT. That fee is approximately $15 a year. And you also agree to adhere to the Code of Ethics, and that is found on page 339. And those are 10, actually there's 11 codes of ethics now. I will post that for you. But those codes are what you agree to adhere to and abide by once you become a radiologic technologist. And we will look at those and discuss those during our live or class setting, but again, look at those on page 339. The 11th one is not listed there. I will share that information with you once we talk about those. The last thing that the ARRT demands that you maintain is that you have to certify that you've attended 24 hours of continuing education over the previous 2 years in order to maintain a current status, which means you're getting at least 12 hours of continuing education every year. And that is mandatory and has become mandatory since 1995. They demanded that we follow that, and so that practitioners can remain current in their field. Okay, and their website is www.arrt.org. Interesting website to check out if you haven't yet. Some state licensing agencies. This is found on page 17. Most states require state licensing in order to practice radiologic technology. There are currently 5 states that do not require licensure. I know that Georgia is one of them, North Carolina is another. I am not sure of the other 3 that do not require licensure. All that means is that you don't have to have state licensure. You still have to have passed the registry and be an active member of the ARRT, but you don't need a state license. Typically, state licensure is accomplished by paying an appropriate fee. Reference that laws can vary greatly from state to state, and you have to identify, if you know that you're going to be moving to a state, you would want to check out and see if that state requires licensure. Some states, like California, require to take another exam. California requires that you take a fluoro exam. If you pass the National Registry, you are not allowed to practice in the state of California without passing that fluoro exam. You can contact the ASRT, which is the American Society of Radiologic Technology, American Society of Radiologic Technologists, for a current listing of all the states and what their requirements are, or you can simply Google search the state you're wanting to go to and look up the Office of Radiation Protection or Radiation Control in that state and see what is required. They reference that many states will honor the certification from a nationally recognized agency such as the ARRT, and that is known as your licensure. All right, as far as professional societies, this again is on page 17. Professional societies represent the general welfare of their members. And a lot of times the duties of a professional society can include education, educating the general public or members of that society. That can be done through publications that they produce. It can be done through symposiums that they put out as far as educational seminars, whether they're in person or they're in written form as in publications. A lot of times they provide scholarships to their members. They do research and special reports. There are governmental affairs that take place and appointments. They offer malpractice insurance a lot of times, and there's often public awareness and marketing that takes place. So when we look at some of the professional societies, they are listed on this next slide here. As far as being a technologist, some of the organizations, these are all of the organizations, but I would tell you that the ones that are most important to us, I've highlighted in red. So we have the AHRA, which is on page 17, the American Healthcare Radiology Administrators, the ASRT, which is the American Society of Radiologic Technologists, AIRS, which is the Association of Educators in Imaging and Radiologic Sciences. And then there are also different state and local societies that wherever you would want to look up any professional societies in your state. We do have state societies, but currently there are not very many, if any, local societies or local chapters that we have. Sometimes they come in, they tend to phase out. You probably would find those more bigger areas like Orlando probably has some, Jacksonville, Tampa, Miami, places like that would have more local societies, but we don't have any local societies near Daytona Beach. The AHRA, the American Healthcare Radiology Administrators, they're designed to promote management practice in the administration aspect of our imaging services. Membership is open to anyone that is engaged in the practice of radiology administration, whether it's a hospital or a non-hospital setting, as well as those that are in service or education or limited management responsibilities. The ASRT is probably one of the biggest societies that technologists belong to. It was founded in 1920, and it is the most prominent national professional voice for radiologic technologists. They actually represent us. They represent individual practitioners, educators, managers, and administrators, as well as students in radiography, radiation therapy, and nuclear medicine. They have over 153,000 members, which is more than half of the radiologic technologists in the United States. Their whole goal is to advance the profession of radiologic technology and imaging, and to maintain high standards of education, enhance the quality of patient care, and further the welfare and socioeconomics of radiologic technologists. They actually a peer-reviewed journal that is called Radiologic Technology, and that is the one for us. They also put out one called Radiation Therapist, and that is typically where you will find your continuing education units. In order to be a member of the ASRT, it costs currently $125 a year, which is well worth it. The CEUs that they put out a minimum of 12 a year, and sometimes if you were to pay to go to conferences or get your CEUs, you'd pay a lot more than $125. Their magazines that they put out in radiologic technology are very educational, very interesting. You can write for the ASRT, you can be a writer of that, you can write different articles. The articles are written by our peers, so they're very interesting and timely. I highly recommend that you become a member of the ASRT. As a student, the cost is minimal. I believe it's $25 a year, and you get the same exact perks as someone that pays full price membership. You also, if you join before you graduate, you can maintain that student registration, meaning you're only paying $25 for 2 years after you graduate. So they cut a little bit of a break, and then in the third year you would have to pay the full price for the membership. But that, if I promoted anything, I would absolutely recommend that you belong to the ASRT as early as now, or definitely before you graduate. And then AIRS, the the Association of Educators in Imaging and Radiologic Sciences, that is open to basically that is open to anyone in education in the imaging sciences. Their whole goal is to encourage the exchange of teaching concepts and establish minimum standards in radiologic technology, and to advance education by encouraging educational research and technical writing. A lot of times they're involved in grant writing. Okay, so those three are very important to us, is understanding the acronym and what it actually stands for. Some of the organizations that are geared towards radiologists and physicists, again, the highlighted ones are what are important to us. We have the AMA, which is the American Medical Association. The American Medical Association was founded in 1847 and is considered the largest and most active medical organization in the world. So more than 300,000 physicians in the United States, more than 70% belong to the American Medical Association. The ABR, or the American Board of Radiology, they are the ones that actually certify the radiologist. So they provide the certification to the radiologist, and there's 3 divisions they have to complete in order to become the radiologist. They have certifications in radiology, diagnostic radiology, and therapeutic radiology. Pretty much they have to pass a written exam before they become eligible for an oral exam. So quite a lengthy process in order for the doctors to become radiologists. A lot that they have to go through, very time consuming, approximately 8 years to become a radiologist. The ACR, which is the American College of Radiology, they are primarily made up of physicians trained in radiology and medical radiation physics in the United States, and their whole purpose is to advance the science of radiology, improve service to the patient, and study the socioeconomic aspects of the practice of radiology. They also encourage education for radiologists and anyone practicing in the allied professional field. The last one, the ARRS, is the American Rankin-Ray Society. This is found on page 19, as all of them are. The ARRS is the oldest United States Radiologic Society. It was founded in 1900 in St. Louis, Missouri, which is literally 5 years after X-rays were discovered. So the American Rankin-Ray Society had approximately 7,000 members in the early 1990s. I'm sure it's well over that by now. And their main objective is education. They meet their educational agenda by publishing what's called the American Journal of Rankinology. It used to be literally in print. Now it tends to be online. When you belong to that, it's expensive to belong to the American Rankin-Ray Society. I believe as a student, the cost is $200. I believe as a technologist, the cost is somewhere $600 to $800 per year to belong to the American Rankin-Ray Society. But it is the oldest U.S. radiologic society. So kind of goals and aspirations before I die, that's on my bucket list to buy a 1-year membership to that. I did have a student that joined, and he actually gave me his login information, and I went on there. Very educational, probably written at a much higher level than most of us could understand. It's written towards doctors, radiologists, very interesting articles, but the wording used in them is a lot of medical jargon, so kind of a little bit difficult for me to understand. So I can imagine as a student it would be a little more challenging. Tons of images on their website, tons of information, just a really awesome society. If you ever wanted to have a goal of what to join, that would be my goal I would share with you, but you might have something different. So this kind of wraps up chapter 2, which is all about professional organizations, understanding who they're made up of, what they represent, and what their function is. So again, review this. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I'll be happy to address those when we meet next. And thank you very much.